Two things. I can make a comparison also that what is going on in other part of the world and what is happening in Pakistan, because I was playing a vital role in a global level since last 17 years in the Asia Pacific and working with the Standard Chartered Bank since last 28 years. So I came just 2 months back to Pakistan, and I can see really the way world is moving. I think somewhere the banking in Pakistan cannot see it. The bank has to change. In the next 10 years, you will see the banking will be very different than what is today. The other part of the world has already moving ahead, and they understand this disruption. If you see the PSD2 and open banking in Europe, or you can see in Asia Pacific, the DG Bank or DIB Bank and other banks came up with a very different way of banking. Now, one prediction is that in the next 5 years to 10 years, the payment will go away from banking. Because all these fintechs and all these players outside banking, they will be providing the services to the customers. And that has to look into the strategy when the bank is setting up the strategy. If you're putting the strategy which is called payment-led strategy, I think you have to think twice. Because might you will make the money in the next 2 years, but you will not be making the money on a long term. The bank has to think about called digital or mobile-led strategy. Pakistan has a unique advantage that the penetration of the mobile is quite high with many other banks as compared to. So we have an advantage to take the leapfrog. And that's what exactly the bank's supposed to do that. That this is the time where they have to innovate the onboarding, where I can see that customers can be able to open digitally the accounts, and also go ahead and provide some of the innovative products which can be able to, people can be able to use through the mobile. And you can see a lot of players in market. I'm very impressed that some of the things like marketplace like Daraz is already doing very well as compared to similar Grab and Lazada and others are doing in Asia Pacific. So Pakistan, I think that all is there. How the bank has to come out from the their own the way we do the banking as a legacy bank. We have to come out and start talking to these players in the market like Lazada, people like who are doing the things like nano lending and the microfinance as well, and create an ecosystem. Not anymore any bank can be able to do everything alone. This is the time where we have to start working with the players which are fintech, players are having PSO, PSB, the players which can work together with the bank to come up with the environment where we can be able to give a better service and product to the consumer. At the end, it is for the consumer, it is for the product, for the people. And that's what you will see. The mobile, because of the mobile, customer expectation is getting changed. It's every year it is getting changed. Are we as a bank changing ourselves to that level to give the customers the service and the product what they want? That's exactly the bank has to think about. And my view is that this is a huge opportunity in Pakistan today, that the market is ready for the digital financial inclusion. Mobile penetration is quite high. The people are really would like to use mobile for the payments. I can see so much of fund transfer, bill payments, and people are at least using the mobile for looking for the balances. So next 2 to 3 years, I feel that these banks should come out and shake the hand with the player in the market.
Okay. Thank you, Arif. Noreen, so you are a disruptor, and one thing which we tell about disruptors is that you give the same problem to the conventional bankers and a disruptor, they will come up with entirely different answers, right? So, how has been the experience of disruption in Pakistan so far, and what's your view on our state of financial inclusion?
Good afternoon, everyone. This puts a lot of pressure on me.
No pressure.
Well, just to give you a little background of where we started and how the disruption really came in, financial inclusion numbers everyone is aware of. As we know, over 100 million people, if I'm to be politically correct, people do not have access to financial services in Pakistan. And, well, there are more numbers if we talk about the informal sector. Now, most of these people have incidental needs, short-term needs, which are really not being met. Something as small as $1,000 could help them cope in times of financial difficulties and pay for something as basic as food, or as essential as medicine, or even as empowering as a school fee. Yes, remarkable progress has been made by the microfinance sector. Since 2000, they now have about 7 million active borrowers. When you talk about conventional banks, we see it's barely 2 million people who actually who are borrowers. It currently really exists a huge gap when it comes to the customers and the current financial institutions. And this gap triggers from things like, them being reported in the credit bureau. As World Bank reports, 1 out of 10 people are on credit bureau registries right now. Then, of course, they have collateral requirements. They have risk assessment requirements, and as we know, most of these risk assessment tools are either missing or they're inadequate. So what really is an opportunity here is the digital railroad. On the contrary, as we've seen, the digital railroad has really jumped leaps and bounds. Right now, we have over 160 million mobile subscribers. That's a tele-density of 78%, a remarkable number. When you talk about smartphone users, it's reached about 70 million users, expected to reach about 90 million by the end of next year. 3G, 4G coverage is almost 90%, and branches banking has also really jumped. Yes, we have 50 million wallets. Half of them are probably inactive, but nonetheless, the digital railroad is in place. So what TAZE has really banked on is banking on this digital railroad to provide financial services via a smartphone application. Essentially, we are a fully digital financial institution, whereby we're providing a full stack of financial services, which includes credit, savings, insurance, and investments to the and the underbanked. And what lies at the heart of TAZE is artificial intelligence. As we're all aware, something that's closest to almost everyone in this room is a smartphone. The smartphone knows about us more than anyone else could. We spend the most time with it. So what we're really doing is we are using smartphone data, and we use proxies for smartphone data, including financial data, geographic data, behavioral data, social demographic data, and we use digital footprints and consumption patterns to assign credit scores, on the basis of which we do a credit underwriting, and then we identify opportunities to cross-sell and upsell. Now, as a lot of people have highlighted in earlier sessions also, there's a huge product mismatch. Most of these institutions are not really creating products that meet the needs of the masses. Consumption needs are not really being met at all. So what the purpose here is really to bring up products and services that cater to their needs. You talk about microfinance, for example. Yes, we understand there are some certain assessment tools that might be missing. What that really does is it leads to a disproportionate graduation system. So people are not really given the financial services that really meet their needs. And what ultimately ends up is that they go into the informal economy, the informal sector, whereby they charge exorbitant rates. And that's an unregulated sector completely.
I just have a couple of observations. We're talking about digital. Opening a bank account in a normal commercial bank takes roughly 2 to 3 weeks. I think, first of all, there's a big gap in terms of all the digital applications and the back office. I'm not sure how digitized the back office is, but if it still takes 2 to 3 weeks to open a normal bank account, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of being fully digital. I mean, Generally, we are talking about front office being digital, but back office, I think, is still very manual, number one. Number two, if we look at, I know every bank is talking about digital, there are a lot of enablers in the market. The growth in number of branches and number of ATMs is humongous. I mean, in terms of there are as many ATMs as there are branches. I think there are roughly 14,600 ATMs and 15,000 branches. Cash component is 8.5 trillion just in 2018. That's roughly $60 billion worth of cash payments were made through checks and ATMs, as compared to digital channels, which was about 17 billion. We have come a long way, but I just wanted some feedback from the panel in terms of this dichotomy between branches are still growing, whereas in more mature markets, branches are going down because as they migrate to digital, we still have a long way to go, I understand that. But similarly, cash transactions are on the rise. They're growing at the rate of almost 17% for the past 5 years. So I just wanted to get panel's feedback on that.
Probably Arif Saab.
Yeah, so let me give you the perspective of that, what are the branches and ATM, and thereafter I will touch upon an account opening. See, very interesting that Pakistan is having 106 branches per million people, which is way below that across the countries. Means that it is in Iran alone is a 285 branches per 1 million. Nepal is high 2. So India is around somewhere around 165 branches per million. So first thing is, we have to understand that it's still in although in the last few years number of branches has opened, I still believe there is a room. So if you see that in Europe, where they have gone to the curve up and now stop reducing the branches, where I see that Pakistan has not reached to that level, where we are talking about the last mile as a problem, but we are not solving problem putting the branch over there because we feel that a branch is not profitable. So that is an issue at a branch level, banking level. The bank always see the profitability when setting up the branch. So I feel and believe is still there is a room of number of branches there. The second question is account opening. Still it is a very manual. The reason behind is the KYC has to be done. Reason behind is that the people have to submit a lot of documents. And a few days back, I was in a conference where Irfan Ali said that we have 1 million people on freelancers, and half of them don't have the account, by the way, and is struggling. So why we are having this cumbersome process of account opening? I think there are areas where we have to work on. My view is that one, Shahzad was talking about shared KYC. I think this is the key. Lot of countries are going on a shared KYC. I feel that shared KYC has to be done, whether on a blockchain or sharing the data, because data belongs to the people, not the institutions. And that's what is the PSD2 and open banking is playing a very vital role in Europe.